Hello, everybody. It's Lauren O'Hayan from Restore Your Core. And today we are talking about, is my pelvic floor too tight or too weak? And how do I know? How can I tell if my pelvic floor is too tight or too weak? So this is a question I get all the time. Before I really dive into the answers, um, I want to talk about the word tight and weak. A lot of people think that the opposite of weak is tight, and that tight means it's too strong. So tight doesn't actually mean too strong. Easy way to talk about it is on things we can see. The pelvic floor you can't see. So let's talk about hip flexors. A lot of people have very tight hip flexors. We are a culture that sits a lot. So we put our hips when we're sitting in this position. When your body holds one position for a long time, again and again repeatedly, what happens is those muscles functionally rearrange themselves to support that position. So your body is trying to help you. So these muscles become very tight. And in being tight, they're not strong. In being tight, they can actually be considered weak. So actually, tight and weak can be the same thing. When we're talking about the pelvic floor, what we really want to think about, well, this is what a lot of people want to think about, but I'm going to encourage you to reframe it also. What other people are trying to say is my pelvic floor, are my pelvic floor muscles hypertonic, stuck in a tense, contracted way, or hypotonic, not contracting enough? So not able to generate tension. When I generate tension with my hip flexors, I pull my leg this way. But if I'm unable to generate tension with my hip flexors, then holding my leg up here without my back doing this, without my knee bending, without my pelvis tucking, I might start. So if I keep all of those things as is and I just hold my leg up here, I might have limited range of motion. And B, I might start to cramp up a lot once I'm asked to be here for longer than a few moments. That muscle could be too tight, or it could not have enough tension, not be able to generate that tension to stay here. Or it might be cramping because it's too tight. It's hard to know unless you do like a variety of assessments, but the good news is the treatment would be the same no matter what. If somebody is tight in their hip flexors, you are still doing movements to bring the hip flexors into their full range of motion. The hip flexors are designed to flex the hip. They're also designed to extend the hip. And we should do both in generating force. We should be able to bring the leg back behind us with strength. We should be able to bring the leg in front of us utilizing strength. So, and when your hips can do that, they're no longer weak or tight, right? They're no longer experiencing the symptoms that could come along with a weak or tight hip flexor. So in the pelvic floor, when the pelvic floor muscles are too hypertonic or hypotonic, we'll use those terms because they're better terms to use. They don't know how to generate the force, or they're already kind of stuck in that tightened position. The symptoms are often the same, but the great news is that the treatment is also the same. So the pelvic floor, the symptoms that you could get symptoms of leaking pee when you run, sneeze, jump. You can get inability to needing to you urinate, and then 5 minutes later you're like, "Well, I have to pee again." Or you get to the door and you go to open the door and you can't hold your urine in. You can have painful intercourse. You can have pain with orgasm. You can have constant low back pain because the low back and the pelvic floor are really interconnected in how they work. And so a lot of these symptoms, the pelvic floor, the urinary, all of those symptoms go hand in hand with whether your pelvic floor is either not able to generate the tension, the strength, or it's holding on to way too much tension. Hypotonic versus hypertonic pelvic floor. And so the words weak and tight don't really, weak and tight are not opposite, because you can be tight and weak together. So it's not one or the other, and tight doesn't mean too strong. It just means too tense. So it's just about reframing the language. The pelvic floor is designed to work in response to changes of movement, pressure, and breath. So what does that mean? Every time I go to pick something up off the floor or reach, right? Or every inhale and exhale I take, the pelvic floor is designed to respond, right? When I go to open the door, my pelvic floor, my arm responds. When I go to kick a soccer ball, my leg responds. So body parts respond to different movement tasks. The task of the pelvic floor, not only to hold up your pelvic organs and to facilitate intercourse and orgasm and childbirth, if you're birthing vaginally, right? It does those things, but it's also working with your core and your breath. So it works with the breathing, the core together to help manage pressure as you do movements. So you don't strain your core, your pelvic floor, or your low back. And those kind of three areas, pelvic floor, core, and breath, the diaphragm area, work together to ensure that smooth adaptability and resilience. Think about a river, and it's running through. But now think about a river with rocks everywhere. So it's running through, but it's got these rocks that it's moving around. It changes the physics of it all. When we have rocks, not really, but when we have rocks in our system disrupting the synergy and the synergistic relationship of the breath, the core, and the pelvic floor, when you have something that's disrupting that synergy, you get rocks in the system, and the flow is not as great. So what happens is the pelvic floor can get either hypotonic, hypertonic. But again, what did we say the treatment was? It's the same. You get the hips doing hip things, right? You get the arms doing arm things. You get your pelvic floor doing pelvic floor things. And what the pelvic floor things are is in response to. So you ensure that actually you leave your pelvic floor alone. You don't need to do a lot of these Kegels. I know people say you do, but they're not really that effective. Long term, they don't actually teach that system to work synergistically, because it's just squeeze, release, squeeze, release. There's no core involved and there's no breathing involved. And in order to really get the pelvic floor doing the pelvic floor things, you need to get those other systems involved. It's like, again, the hip flexor. If all we did was stretch it, let's just do this stretch, stretch, stretch. It's not going to actually change your tight hip flexors. People who have tight hamstrings and just stretch their hamstrings don't really change. They're like, I've been stretching for years and I'm so tight. Right. Because just pulling on something or just strengthening something doesn't necessarily work. If all I did was bicep curls here, I'd be walking around looking like this, right? If I didn't have this balanced action around the whole joint, which would require movements here, right? Pulling, pushing, curling, extending. If I don't have that, then I'm stuck in a tension pattern, right? And this tension pattern doesn't make me strong. It's just that I don't have balance across the joint. Once again, balance across the joint in your pelvic floor is not about, can you do 30 Kegels in 5 seconds? It's more about, is your pelvic floor responding to movement, breath, core? And in order for that to happen, we need the spine to move well. We need the hips to move well. So it becomes this whole body. Is my whole body participating in creating that responsivity? Or is there something blocking my core or my spine or my pelvic floor? Do I hold my breath? Do I grip? Do I pull my belly in all the time? Do I have tight hip flexors? That will affect your pelvic floor. Do I have very tight inner thighs? That will affect your pelvic floor. Am I always standing with my back lifted and arched like this? That will affect your pelvic floor. So really the approach that you want to start to take and think about it, which is really a reframing from the current paradigm, is what is possibly impeding my pelvic floor from doing pelvic floor things, right? And again, when you look at the arm or the leg, you can see more easily what the impediments might be, where the tightness might be, where the rocks in the river are. With the pelvic floor, it's a little bit different. It's more nuanced. If you really want a comprehensive approach to figuring out all of the rocks that might be impeding the flowing river, then my 12-week Restore Your Core program is a wonderful place to begin. With educating yourself, you get education and the exercises. But once again, don't fall into the trap that all you need to do are more Kegels or more stretching for your pelvic floor. If you have a very tight hypertonic pelvic floor and you have, again, all these symptoms and you're just trying to stretch all the time and it's not working, the reason it's not working is the same hamstring analogy. You can't stretch out the symptom. You can't stretch it away because the symptom is representative of other things. There's you got to get to the root cause of why it's tensing to begin with. I hope that has helped you understand your pelvic floor even just a little bit better, a little bit more body literacy. Thanks for joining.